So welcome to Bunny's Designs. This is part 2 of a flick through my colour books. Why I colour different pages and different books in different ways. So I basically use colours in 2 ways. I use them out of my little book of watercolours, and we're going to start a series of how I made this, so that if you've only got one particular water-based medium, then you can put this into here. And I'll start with the Caran d'Ache. But I've got the Peerless in there, and I've got the Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2s. So even though I've only got, and it's always that yellow one creases, I don't know why, it's the green one. One of them always creases down. Now I'm normally quite careful with mine when it comes to liquids. And most of this is just pieces of plastic. I've destroyed a couple of cheapy photo books that you get from the pound shop. And you can either just stick 3 of those together and use those, as long as you have a piece of plastic between. And then the actual sleeve, and it won't work on that one because that's not an actual sleeve. Part of this book was made from another book. So basically you have a sleeve where you would normally put your photograph, and I've made a piece of photocopy paper, and you fold it long ways, and then you cut across the middle. I have a piece of photocopy paper handy. Yes, I have. Bear with me a second. Oops. So we have a piece of printer paper, which is, I think, 11.5 by 8 3/4 or something like that. Really cheap. Fold it in half, lengthways. Cut it down the longest, and then fold both of them in half. And that gives you 2 pages. Then you slide one piece. This is where you would put your photographs in both sides, but we don't. We only use one side. So where there'd be a photograph here and a photograph here, this is for something. I've left this for something else. Now I do put a little piece of paper up there. So I use Sketchbook, C White Sketchbook, which is sketchbook paper, extra wet. As long as it says extra wet on sketchbook paper, and you want it as flat as possible, so that's the sketchbook, but you want it to be able to take a little bit of water. Don't use watercolour paper, because watercolour paper, when it gets wet, absorbs colour, and we want that colour to sit on top. So you can see the Gansai Tambi watercolours. I made a puddle in the original pan, and then I kind of twisted the brush and about 4 times to make a big fat puddle. I cut round the squares and I stuck them on the photocopy paper, and you stick on 2 sides, and then the other one slides into there and becomes a page. Now I'm not going to use this side for a photograph. I mean, you could put a photograph if you wanted, but I find it's easier not to. Turn it over, and then you want, I've got an extra piece in there, that's why. You put one in that one, but I've stuck it up for some reason. So what you need is a colour page, and the plastic, another colour page. So that page is protected with this plastic, and this page is protected with this plastic. So that means if you're in a hospital and you've wet this, and the doctor calls you, you can shut the book and you are not contaminating colours. If you had these two colours together without the plastic and you shut it, that colour will contaminate that one. Even if they're dry, really, the Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2s and the pencils will do that, because they're very well pigmented. So you need some good quality water-based things for here. And if you want extra pages, then I've actually just used both sides of this photo box. It's a paper chase, and I have one here. It's a photo album from Paper Chase, and I found this is the nicest one. It's the prettiest one, it's practical, and it has 24 prints. So you can use, I put paper at this side, and I had this here. And because mine's so fat, if you just have a few colours, if you had just the Neos, you could do full pages of them, because these squares are obviously bigger. But if you just had 36, you could do a whole page of that green, and then you could do a whole page of that green if you've only got 2 greens, and this book will last a lot longer. I tend not to kind of use mine as much. I did for this one. And then when you've used it a lot, all you need to do, and I keep my crayons in my Derwent art bag. When I'm using them, I flip them and keep them out. And I keep them in order, in colour order, and in order that they're in the book, because I can go to 5, 4, 8. Now that's actually in my, I don't think I've got 5, 4, 8. No, it's in another set of Neos, is that, which isn't far away. Now these are really difficult to get, which is why I shocked my husband when I bought this book. Now you can't buy these anymore. They don't make them. They haven't made them for a long time. But if you have an odd art shop, now the ones they have now are wax. Sorry, the ones they have now are oil. They look like this, but they're oil based. They're not watercolor. But Caran d'Ache used to make these, and they're basically the first model before the Neos. But you can't get them anymore unless you find an old shop. But these are very old, but they're made. They were made in that way. Now, if I look at the bottom layer, in the browns, and that's burnt umber. They call this cocoa, but I think it's dark beige now. What's that one? That one is, that's genuine umber. Toledo brown. Some of these exist and some don't. Let me look at the number. 549, did I say? Just bear with me a second. Burnt umber is the top one, which is burnt umber at 549. Now, if you see that little kind of ridge there, if you look, you can see how much I've used, which is not very much to fill this side. Now, they're slightly different. So I know I can scratch over there. And you want a layer of about 2. Now some of the Neos are a bit crumbling, you get bits, but don't throw them away. You just kind of mush them in because it's pure colour. And I just kind of reconstituted that one. So don't brush the little bits off because it's pure colour. But this is because these were made and they've changed the pigment, and the Neocolor 2s, you don't get that crumble. So 548 has to be the one. I've got genuine umber on here. Oh, it says genuine umber. I can't read my writing. So 548 is 548. And again, you can see that's the little bit that I've used. And I've used this twice. So then if you look on here, and this is why you need sea white, extra strength, extra wet watercolor sketchbook paper, because I wet that completely and it's done nothing. It was a bit soggy, it's dried out, it's perfectly okay, it's as it was, but you do have to leave it a day to dry out. If you did that with watercolor, it would disintegrate. So what I can do, and when I made my first book, I didn't think it would last. I thought once I'd used the square, I'd have to throw it away. So if you use, I use sea white sketchbook paper, extra wet. As long as it says extra wet on it, you can do this 10 times, 100 times. And I used a wet brush for this, and I'll show you what I used this one, particular one for. So you'll find after 3 layers, you get bits, and that's when you want to kind of just mush them in and stop. But that's given me a really good coating. If you can see the shine on there. About 2 layers. If it's a watercolor pencil, you get 3 layers. Caran d'Ache Neocolors are so creamy because it's a wax pastel rather than. So I've kind of, the reason I put these in here and they're not in color order is because I found this set 2 days after I bought my Neos, my extra Neos. I had about 30, 40, and I decided that I would buy the rest individual. I wouldn't have bought these if I'd got these, even though I do love them, because I couldn't really afford both. But this is a set I've had for 20 years in a set of 15. Maybe 15 years. And I saw these and had to buy them, but they were very, very expensive. But they're going to last me a long time. I've now filled my page twice, and I've used that much. So that's going to go back into there. Now, if you're in London and you can get the train out to, I did tell on the whole book of this, I did actually say the name of the shop, and I can't remember it now. So I just double check that I don't need any more, because I might need another one of those. So these at the back here, these 6 are 6 from this set that they don't make in Neos anymore, or I haven't got them. If that makes any sense. So the bottom here, which again I wouldn't have bought, but they're in the set because it's not kind of my thing. But in the bottom here we have a silver. And again, I'm going to take this last page and scratch silver. And this is, with your Neos, this is all you need to do. So go across 1 layer and then back the other way. Now sometimes I put a ruler at the end so I can get a really nice square. But you don't have to do squares, you could do oblongs, you can do whatever shape you want, or you can do a full page. If I only had Neos, I would do a full page of silver. You see the little bits coming off? You can smush those on, and it's just pure colour. And I've got a few bumps, but it's fine. I'm not going to throw them away. It's pure colour, is that? And that's the difference between the pigment they used a few years ago and the new Neo 2s. So if you buy the Caran d'Ache Neo Colours Neo Art, they're older than the Neocolor 2s. It's a slightly different pigment, not much. The pigment's still brilliant. It's the binder that's slightly different. So that's now completely reconstituted. And I'm going to go over this one because I had a spare square and I didn't know what to do with it. So I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I only had a gold and a silver. So I put a layer of silver on there. And I've smushed all those in. You can do it with your finger. Or you could use a rolling pin, a glass bottle, I think somebody said they used to mush that in. And then somewhere there should be a gold. There's the gold. 499. And again, mine says 499. Sorry, 449. Well, I'm dyslexic, so I put 499, but never mind. I know what it is. So again, gold, and that's how much I used last time. And I'll show you just what it did in a second. So we've got the gold. So I'm going to put a good layer on that one, like I did the silver. And then when you start to see bits, you know you've got enough on there. You've got 2 layers, 3 possibly. So I can put this back in here safe, and now I have gold in my little book. But here I've done silver, so I decided I would put a layer of silver and I would put a layer of gold over the top. So I'm going to put a layer of gold over the top of this silver. Now, that's gold. It's all smushed in. Put that away. And these are very precious, so I haven't actually used them in the traditional way, which if you go on YouTube and type in Neo Aquella water-soluble wax pastels, you will see artists melt them, scratch them all over. Difficult to snap, but you'll find that. So welcome, this is a live stream recorded for Ustream.tv and also for YouTube for people to watch at their leisure. So thank you for joining me. A few technical difficulties, but hopefully there might be a little bit of content in there for you. So I'm going to pop this. It has its own drawer, safe and sound. And I'll show you what that 2 or 3 shades did of silver and why there wasn't much. So we've got 3 little squares, and I was going to come to this later, but I might as well do this now. I look at a page and I think, what am I going to use? Big spaces. It's difficult to use a wet brush on all of it and not get crinkles. So what I would tend to do with this one is scratch colour in and then use a damp brush to activate it. So maybe the Caran d'Ache or the, I probably actually kind of like the idea of using Inktense blocks with a damp brush. So different pages do different things, but when it comes to metallic and metal, I always kind of have a bit of a moment thinking, well, it's all metal, is this? What on earth am I going to do? Oh, dear me. it's actually a finished page, so it should. And the reason I was practicing is because I wanted to do the butterfly. And it's my favourite page, and I haven't done it yet because I haven't found the right things. I've been playing with Neocolor 2s. I'm playing with the Caran d'Ache and the Derwent watercolour metallic pencils, which are water-based, and they're in my little book. The brown one that I used here and scribbled, and the Genuine Umber, did all that bird. So it will do nearly a full page with a small square. So you don't have to think it's not going to last. Now, if you're doing a very big thing, then obviously it's not going to go as far. But if you're just doing a colour page, you can normally do quite a few colour pages using a little bit of everything. And of course, Murphy's Law says that I am not going to be able to find the page that I want to find. One last quick look, and if I can't find it, I shall. Right, might be the newer one then. Polygon drops, sorry guys. I will come to it. It is in here somewhere. So now my little book, they're replenished. There's a few little bits missing. Again, that's a flesh colour. So I can go to my flesh pink. I don't know where I've put my flesh pink. I don't think that's flesh pink, is it? What colour is that one? No, that's salmon pink. Salmon pink. 71 is that one. I've put my... Oh, it's my flesh pink is actually in the box, but I'm not going to get the box out again, so I could have done that at the same time. And the dark carmine as well, that's in the other box. I've used a little bit of raw umber, again number 49, and raw umber is should be number 49. And some of mine are modern and some are new, so the things are in different. That's number 59, which isn't on there. But because they're all numbered, I know where they are, and I normally have them in order. I think that might be a newish one as well. 45 is Van Dyke Brown, which is this one. So again, that's why I label it, and I've got a colour swatch. 45, 45, I can just scribble a little bit of colour on there, and it's as good as new. If you did it on watercolour, most of that colour would have disintegrated and your page would have disintegrated, but this Sea White sketchbook paper is really good, extra wet strength. And that's all I do. I just go around it, and I don't use a lot. Some have all got little circles. Now some of these circles, that's what you use to make your colour guide. So when I'm using my Neos, I don't look at this. Oh, what's happened to this? I don't look at my Neos. I look in my little book. So even though I'm working from these, I look here and I think, right, I want a brown. And I can be working with these, but I look at the Van Dyke Brown and I won't look here, I'll look here. Because when you work from a little colour book, you get 10 shades, 10 tones from one colour. When you work from the colour here, straight down or wet, you just get one colour, possibly 2 or 3. But if you use a paper palette and you manipulate how much colour you take, you get more colours. So this one here, if I want a very pale colour here from sepia, I'll go into the wet bit I've already used. If I want a strong colour, I'll go to the next full amount of crayon. And that works really well. The burnt carmine is, you know, you've got a very pale colour here and a very dark one. So if I want this colour, I'll go here with a paintbrush. And if I want this colour, like I did there, I started again here because I wanted a real strong colour. And it works really well, this. You can have all the tones in between. And you can do that with this. They brought out a palette. Now that's an old one, it's really scratched. This one is a newer one and it's not so scratched. These are about 99p. And I prefer these because, as you can see where it's gone, where it's scratched, colour's gone in there. Whereas if you use it off the top, you don't waste any colour. So I won't be using this, and I won't be buying the Caran d'Ache one. I'll be using my shiny one for 99p. Because that means that I will be using every scrap of colour. So I hope that made sense. So if you've got any questions, pop them in caps. As I say, this is a live stream, so the quality isn't HD, and it might be a little bit slow and a little bit jerky, but apologies for that. It's probably me, because I am a bit slow and a bit jerky, but there we go. So if you just have the Neocolor 2s, I would be putting a page in here, because we've got a page for there, which when you flip it, it's going to be protected on this side and that side. You turn it over. Now, if you were doing this as a photo book, you put a photograph there and you put a photograph there. Now, you can do that with this method, but you would have to put in the middle a spare bit of plastic, which is what I've done. So I've got extra ones built here, and I've bought, I haven't destroyed this one, although they're only 150. I've bought the cheap poly albums from the pound shop, and I've cut them up and stuck them with just a bit of sellotape. And sellotape works really well. It's just sellotape, if you can see that stuck there. And that's allowed me to have twice as many. I've got twice as many. So this says you can get 24 prints in it, and if you did this method, you get 24 pages. And I've got 112 Neos, so we want, that's one. So if you put the plastic in between, you can double it. So you've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. But what that will do is, if you've got a salmon pink and you want a flesh pink, and we've all got white. Now, I don't put white and black in here, but they are in the sets. They're in all the sets. You could scratch a layer of salmon pink and a layer of white. You could do a layer of white, a layer of salmon pink, and a layer of white. And that's give you 2 flesh tones. You can put white here, and you can put pink there, and you cross them over. So these two, if I wanted, I could cross them over. And I would get an orangey olive, a lighter orange. And you can, so even though you've only got probably 36 of these, every one colour can be mixed with another colour on another square, and you get twice as much. Now when you're going for your colour, you've got to make sure, like I did here, that you go through both layers. So this, I had gold and silver. I put a layer of silver and a layer of gold. So I've got a cool gold or a warm silver, depending on how you look at it. But I could have done the same. If I'd have had all these, I would have, the other way of doing it is to scratch two colours next to each other, and then you can mix them as you go along. So you can get your little brush and mix both colours together. There's lots of different ways you can do this. You can put a little bit of pink with the silver. You can put gold with the silver. You could put flesh pink with the silver and with the gold. You can mix two greens together. So you've got thousands and thousands of combinations. So don't think just because you've got two greens, you've got two greens. You haven't. You've got four greens. And then you've got everything in between. So you could have a big square of this and a small square of this. You could have a big square of this and a small square of that. You could have a half and half. And then you've got the original and the original. So just there you've got six. You've got 6 greens from 2 crayons. And you can do that with and then you can mix the green with the blue and do the same. So you'll have all bluey greens. Then you've got your other greens. You could do the other one with the same blue. If you've got 2 blues, then you've got another 6 pale bluey greens or greeny greens. Then you can do the same with the greens with the 2 yellows. And then you've got yellow greens, and you've got warm yellow greens if it's a lemon yellow, and if it's a bright yellow, you'll have cold greens. And then you can do that with the other green and the 2 yellows. So you'll end up with hundreds and hundreds of colours from 6. Just remember the colour wheel. You've got that yellow, but you can mix the orange with that yellow. You can mix the orange with that yellow, but you can do more orange and a little bit of yellow, or more yellow and a little bit of orange. So you've got 6, 8 colours there. Then you can do the same with the orange with the red and the orange with the other red. So you can end up with 36 oranges. You don't need 36 near colour 2s in orange colours. So you can mix the colours all together. Hope that made sense. Did that make sense? Did that make sense? Hopefully it did. The same with the pinks. If you've got 1 pink and 1 purple, and you've got 2 reds. Do you know, I could do that. I could do that, couldn't I? Yeah, I might do a bit of that because I've got my Neos. And I can show you just how much or how little you use. I mean, all these have been used to make a colour in here, and there's only a little bit of the edge missing. Tiny bit. Tiny bit. I've done this one twice now. The Van Dyke I've done twice, and yet if you push it next to the other one, it doesn't look much different. But it's had 2 full colours of this. So I could do that actually next. So even though you've only got a few Neos, you can make a lot of colours. Now, sometimes I'm going to look at a big space in a colour book, like here. And, if you're going to use your water brush, you're going to have a big space that's going to have colour. But you can do that 2 ways you can get away with it. And I will show you in this book. So this big space, well, this big space was what I did first. But if you've got poorly hands, you can't do this because it's not, it's okay, but if you have trouble scribbling with a pencil, like I have, you know, it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable if you're going to want to do this all day. And there is a video on this, and you'll have to bear with me because I have so many colour books. This one. So this particular page is flat. It has, apart from the butterfly and the paper, everything else has got colour on it. And I scratched with a pencil, and I think this is Derwent watercolour pencil. Scratched all over with the pencil. And I think I used a rigger, but I would have been better with a damp brush. And then you activate it. So there is a video on this. And it's the Colin Thompson colour book with Derwent watercolour pencils. Scratched all the colour in pencil. So I got the pencil and scratched. And then I manipulated. Now if I wanted two colours, I'd use the pale, in fact I think there's three here. So you use your pale pencil first, and then you use your second pencil, and then you use your darkest pencil. Then you go in with a brush and you do the pale first, then you do the middle, and then you do, lastly, you do the dark. And you will end up with colour on your paintbrush. So you can either go somewhere else to get rid of it, or wipe it on a damp baby wipe. But you could do that with the Neos. So if you were doing a grey, now you have to be careful putting this on a page. You will transfer colour because they are very well pigmented. So I normally have a piece of photocopy paper. And then you can put them on there, and you can work from here. So we'll look at the greens. Oopsie. And I like a little bit of paper underneath. So I've got mine in the colour order that I like. Excuse me. And in my book, in my Derwent art bag, these are the little eyelets where it goes in. This is my middle page. My first page, I have the greys and browns. My second page, I have my light yellows, oranges, reds, pinky reds, purples, purpley blues, turquoises, dark blues. Flick it over, light greens to dark greens to olives to I've got a couple of unusual ones there, but they're in colour order, numerical order as well. So you can use it in your book like this, in the actual bag. Open the bag out. If I'm away, I don't take them out. But if I'm on my desk, I have them next to me. But these how they sit in the Derwent art bag. And I can get 6 sleeves in mine full of colour. Absolutely full of colour. And they're all protected. Take it out, scribble a colour and push it back. Now, another thing you could do, and I might actually do this really quickly. So that one was the pencils, but I said there is a video. Now, the other way to do it with the Neocolor 2s is, this might be another one to do because it has big spaces. I'll just go through the other first, then I'll go back to that. This is a fairly big space, but this is pastel. So I decided to use pastel. I think this is watercolour, but I can't remember, so I'll have to have a quick look. This particular page, and getting that watercolour effect, so there's highlights and lowlights, was all done from the squares. Now there were smaller squares, but they were done from the Derwent watercolour pencils from a paper palette. Now you don't have to make a book. You can just, if you're going to use it once, just scratch it on. You can even scratch it on photocopy paper. It's just if you want to keep it in your book and be able to reconstitute it rather than remaking the page again, the C White Extra Wet Strength is best. So that's if you're using a water-based pencil or crayon. Scratch the colours you want, whether you want one tone or two tones to be mixed. Again, if you've only got a light green and a dark green, scratch light green and dark green. Have to be water-based. Watercolour pencil, watercolour crayon, watercolour pastel. Then you can blend with a brush. If you do it with wax, you've got to use terps or some kind of liquid spirit to mix them, but you can do it. And I'm saving up for the Derwent, so the Caran d'Ache wax, oil wax pencils. So this is a big space here. Now I did this one in the same way. There was a video. I think this one was with the Derwent art bars. Scratched the colour, then manipulated it with a damp brush. So I got a nice variation of colour, but I can do a big space and it's flat. If you're not bothered about buckling pages, slap that on, it's fine. But I don't particularly like that. So this is another one that has some bigger spaces. And I look at a colour book and think, I don't want to do that in a small brush with Derwent pencils using my little book, because I'd use too much colour out of my book, and also it needs a bigger brush because it's big spaces. So I would choose to scratch the colour into the book and then manipulate it with a damp brush, and I would use a watercolour brush, probably a number 2 Derwent, but I wouldn't use it very wet. I would just use it barely damp. And the one thing about the Neos and the Derwent water-based pencils and the water-based art bars is they're very well pigmented, so you just need a little bit of water to activate them into a gorgeous, gorgeous, creamy watercolour, which you then can spread about. And you can keep your flat pages as well. Now this other one I actually did, so all these are either Derwent pencils, Derwent pastel pencils, which I manipulate with a damp brush and then it makes them set. This particular one, I haven't finished it, so it's a pastel. It was a Derwent pastel pencil, it's still pastel, so I've got greaseproof paper between, or tracing paper works quite well. Otherwise all that would rub off on the other side. At the moment my hands are not very well, so I can't use the pencils, so this page is on hold. And again, this one, I look at this page and think, there is no way I want to use my Neos from this particular book. I might want to scratch colour and use my water brush, but I would be using the pencil or the crayon. I wouldn't be using a little bit here and a little bit there, because I would use all that page, and also I would be using too much water to manipulate that small amount of colour. So I hope that made sense. Did that make sense, everybody? So thanks. Hi to everybody. Hi Rego, welcome to Bunny's Designs. Anybody else that's popping in? So that's what I normally do. I look at a page and think, well, this isn't a page I would colour in hospital or on my knee, wherever, because it's going to need some colour to it. Now, what you could do is you could scratch the colour with the crayon, and you could do all your books like that, and then get a piece of ordinary cheap photocopy paper would be fine for that. Of course, I put those pieces away that I had. And I probably do that today as well, is You take the green, I don't really want green, and you scratch the colour. And then you take your other colour and you completely cover it in crayon, water-based medium, whether it be crayon, pastel, pencil, as long as it's water-based. And you completely scratch the colour where you want it. But you don't activate it with water. You put a piece of paper between and you shut the book. And you go to another page. And then you can colour this one in, ready to activate it. And then what you can do there, but again you'd need another piece of paper. So you could physically go through all your colour books and colour in the colours you want at home, and then every page would have a piece of cheap paper, or you could use tracing paper if you wanted, but cheap photocopy paper between. And when you open it up, there might be a little bit of colour on here, which is why you haven't contaminated the two pages, especially with the Neos, because the colour, you look at a Neo and you get contamination, you get the colour coming off because they're so well pigmented. So in your colour book, every page has had some colour scratched on it, ready to activate with a brush. So if you could go on holiday and you could take your book and a couple of water brushes, or your thin brushes, depending on how you work, you could just take this and your brushes, and your whole colour book is ready to colour. All you're doing is manipulating the water-based medium you've scratched on. So I would put a line of colour on the outside and a line of colour on the other side, and I would leave the middle white. And then wherever I was, when I wanted to activate the colour, I would then sit and do my art work and concentrate, and I would manipulate the colour. Now the disadvantage is if you do one colour and you think, oh, I didn't want that colour next to that one, it's too late because it's in. So you need to get used to your colours. But what you could do is you could put colour in your on your pages. You could do the whole book as long as you had a piece of cheap paper between. So you don't contaminate your gorgeous yellows with a dark purple on this side, because it would rub off. And then when you came to activate that colour, you would get a dirty yellow. I hope that made sense. Did that make sense? So I might actually do a page. In fact, I might do that page, but we'll do that on the next video when we talk about colours. So this is how I choose what to do. Obviously, this was the first page, but again, I photocopied it because I originally, from this gentleman, Colin Thompson, a long time ago, the girls bought me his original, which was a laptop cover. Quite a number of years ago, we used to cover our laptops with a personalised plastic sticky cover, like sticky back plastic. And my kids bought me this one. So I'd already seen all these really deep, gorgeous colours, and I didn't want to use those. So I photocopied it and played with colour. And I came up with the whole one, ready done, which I've popped somewhere. And then when I'd done it, I thought, well, actually, I don't like that colour, I don't like that colour. So if I'd have actually done it in the original book, I would have been a bit disgruntled with myself and think, well, I've ruined that page now because I don't like that colour next to that colour. But by doing a practice page, I worked out some colours were good together, and my favourite colours I couldn't use on these pages because they looked too bright, too deep, too intense, and I wanted a pastel watercolour effect. So by ironing out one colour page, and by doing that, I didn't have to do it again because I knew what my Derwent watercolour pencils could do. And that's always good if you get the Neos, do a practice page with the Neos. Then you learn how to do, you learn how you like the colours. You learn how to mix the colours. The same with the Inktense pencils. Do a practice page, and then you're not ruining a page by thinking, oh, why did I do that for? And you look through and think, yes, well, I've written I could use Derwent pencils by scratching colour or by using from my little book. The bigger pages I completely dismissed because there's big spaces. This is another one I can use from my little colour book. So again, I could take my little book of colours and my book and a water brush and my 3 favourite riggers, and I can leave my tin of pencils at home, my Neos at home. I've got them all in here, and I can work from the little squares. And I can use them as a watercolour effect, and I can choose the colours as I go along. But once you've scratched the colours in, they're kind of in. This is another one with pastels, but I just can't use the pastel pencils at the moment. So I've got that to finish as well. And it's not set because I intend to finish it when I've done the whole page, like the Harry Potter ones. I intend to go in and do some light and dark shadows. So I can use my electric eraser and I can make some highlights on the wood. And I'll go through the whole box, the whole page rather. And then I can use a darker colour and put some low lights in there and some shadows. And then I will take my damp rigger and I will just very carefully go over the whole thing. And once it's been dampened, it becomes a water-based medium, and it's dried almost immediately, and it becomes set. And that means you don't have to spray it with anything, and you don't have to use any nasty chemicals. You can set pastel pencils and pastels with a damp rigger. It becomes an unofficial watercolour, shall we say. The same with this one. I'm going to scratch some colour and then I'm going to activate it with a damp brush. And that's why some of them I've started and some of the bigger spaces I haven't. So I've got quite a few gaps in that book. So that leads me on to my next book. Just let me have a very quick look at this to see if I can look at my time. So this page has got to be some kind of either working from a watercolour, but I think the best thing is to scratch colour in there and then activate it with a damp brush. So I can put the sky would be white, neo colour, with a blue, more white, more blue. And then when I come to activate it, I can go the white fluffy cloud and then gently just add a little bit of blue, and then we've got more blue, and do it that way. And that means your pages stay very flat. So just watch this space, that will be the next video. The same with the tails here. If you're using watercolour, you've got to do it in sections. Small sections, because if you went to wet a whole of that page, it would crinkle. Small spaces are easy. You just use either a small brush or you scratch colour in like I did. This is a comparison between the Derwent watercolour pencils. Sorry, I tell a lie. This is the Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2s and the Derwent art bars. But I've stopped doing it because they don't make the art bars anymore, and so it wouldn't really be fair. But as you can see, the colours are almost identical. So I can't make videos with things that are no longer in production. This one is, I think this is the Peerless, and I think I've used it from, again, I can either use a small amount or I can use it from a palette. And these are very old. Some of these, I've had these many years, but they still make them. They're a few pounds. So these are my dried Hydrus. which look like this. So I've got, and I don't use the black and white, but I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. I've got 16, but I've put some drops together to make greens, to make a middle yellow between those two, a middle pink between those two, a middle purple between those two, a middle red between those two. I've mixed blues with the greens and the yellows, and I've got quite a lot of different colours, hundreds of colours from, this is the number 1 set. I think there's a couple of browns and a red that isn't in the original set. I think the set's 15, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Well, maybe there's 12 in a set. They're a little bit expensive, but there's half a fluid ounce in those. These are plastic, or you can get 1 fluid US ounce in a glass bottle. I think they're about $100 for the double one. They're about £60 for the half ounce. And they come in 3 sets, 1, 2 and 3. But these are Hydrus Fine Art ones. They do a Hydrus like an ink base, but they're not watercolors. They're not professional watercolors. They're more of an inky base. But if it's the Hydrus watercolor, fine art watercolors, these are pure professional liquid watercolors, and a tiny drop goes a long way. So at this side, I've got all my colors here, and then I've mixed 2 yellows and 2 blues, and I've got phthalo green and phthalo blue to make phthalo turquoise, and that's the color that I did. It'll nicely bring me on to the birds. And I didn't use the Hydrus until, again, I looked at this page and thought, do I want to do a brown boring bird? And I'd used these colours, the Hydrus, in the aviary colour book. And again, sometimes you can look at another colour book and think, yes, those colours are going to go on those birds. And again, that was fairly quick. I think I worked with a rigger, but I did work from here. I didn't work from dry. I worked from drips. There is a video. A couple of hours each page. Really, really quick, but gorgeous mixed. The beautiful blues, and you can't see the greens on the wings, but they're all kind of teal colours. Can you see the colours a bit better? So these are the Hydrus, and I did manage to get a little bit of a watercolour effect, the pale at the end. So again, with the brush, these are so vibrant, a damp brush, a tiny touch, and you just go through, and you just keep going and going and going. And the damp rigger will dilute that colour so you get a really natural watercolour effect. Or use the whole brush and keep going, but whatever you do, do not put that in your water pot, because you're wasting all your colours going from here to the brush and down the drain. So again, there's a couple of videos of how I did that, and that then inspired me to do, as soon as I saw these they may not be in here, the dragons. It inspired me to think, yeah, I'm not going to have a boring octopus. I'm going to have the vibrant blues and the greens and mix them together. And I think it inspired me to do a dragon as well. And I also started this last week. So really vibrant. Now, a little bit of buckle here because it's a bigger space, and I used them wet. Tiny little bit of crinkle there, but the rest of it is completely flat. So you can get some gorgeous, gorgeous watercolor effects. And again, exactly the same, but different, slightly different technique. And I love that effect. So I've got 2 ways to work from things, and I could even get a better watercolor effect if I'd used the Hydrus from these drops. Now, there's a couple of drops on each page here, and there's about 5 or 6 drops now, but originally there was only 1 or 2 drops. but I've used these 3 times. So there's tons of colour on here to do many pages. If you didn't want to take all the bottles with you, and believe me, when you drop one of these, you cry, and it goes everywhere. If you didn't want to, I mean, this is dried. They're very tacky, but they're not going to go anywhere. So you could just take this with you and a water brush and your colour book. Or to reduce them even more, put them a few drops. The thing you have to remember though is they've got to be flat because it's liquid, and if there's a curl on your page, they'll run off. So you need a very flat surface of plastic, and you can't touch these again. Well, you can, but they're a little bit tacky. They never fully dry out. But I've got 3 pages of gorgeousness in Hydrus colours. Now, the only difference with this is there's colour on this side and colour on that side, but I couldn't get a piece of white paper between, so you've got to kind of guess the colours on there. But there's purple, green, I've mixed a light green, there's an orange, a yellow, and I've mixed the greens together on that page. So again, there's quite a few different ways to work with these. And I like that. So now I've got something that, you know, if it's unusual, I don't have to think, well, that's going to be a boring bird. I can use my imagination, and I don't have to do the normal colours. And so that's kind of stretched the colour imagination in me. Normally, when I see something, and this was the first page I coloured in was this, because it had flowers and green leaves. I had some inkling of what to do. So that was the first page, which is actually the last page of Animorphia. Sorry, Imagimorphia. Wouldn't have had a clue what to do here. This was a practice with watercolours. These were Inktense and other things. Just having a practice. If you really need a practice, do it on the first couple of pages. And again, I've left that. And so I've been skipping to a page and thinking, oh, that's got flowers on it. So one of the next pages I did was this one, because I know what colour a toadstool is. I know what colour a bunny is. Again, you know, some people have done beautiful, vibrant greens and brown bunnies. In fact, I might buy this book again and use the Hydrus. This one again, I've used browns, and these are the Neos. So the Neos, you can get very soft pastel shades. These are Neocolor 2s. And there's a video on this, scratching a bit of colour and then manipulating it with a brush and scratching both colours there. And here, a really pale effect. I think I actually used my little book. Sorry, I used the colours out of here. So if you want vibrant colours, use the crayon. If you want more control and some of these tones here, you need to scratch a bit of colour. And that's why the brown that I showed earlier was completely almost gone. And I wanted these tones, and I got these tones. So I've got some dark tones and beautiful, soft, light watercolour effects on this bird. But that's because I used it from this paper palette. So even though you've got Neocolor 2s, you can use them in different ways. And because these were small spaces, I think I used a rigger. But there is a video on here, so please correct me if I'm wrong. Again, I think it took a couple of hours. They're not like the other ones that take me hours and hours and hours. So your Neocolors are really good in this. And plus the fact, if you want to go on a plane, these are a wax crayon that a bit softer, and it would be Semtex. So really want to kind of keep them. If they melt, if you take them on the beach, they'll get bitty. So this way you can take them anywhere you want. Anybody got any more questions? This is watercolor. And again, I've used my rigger brushes. This is when I use the rigger brushes. Then when I got the new set of Neos, I realised that they are actually quite vibrant, and I'd gone from very pale. These are my pale, kind of boring, traditional colours. So I thought I'd try to grunge up and do complementary colours. If you mix two complementary colours together, but not totally together, but put a little bit of yellow to purple, you will dull the purple. If you put a little bit of purple to the yellow, you'll dull the yellow. And they look grungy, what I call grungy. So I kind of like that idea. And that that was inspired by the Graphitint. The Derwent Graphitint pencils are gorgeous for that grungy kind of feel. And that inspired me to do this one. Because again, looking at pages, it's mechanical. What do I do? So I used this particular one is actually my own colours. So I went back to this palette from the horse, and this one was made with 3 colours. And they're gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous colours. And I used the Cotman Tube, which was 99p. I think they're about $2.99, but they were 99p. And I bought a lemon yellow, I bought alizarin crimson, and a cerulean blue. And I coloured a couple of pages with that. And then I thought, well, if you've got the orange and the green and the purple, you start making greys by mixing complementary colours. So on the top in the middle, you see some really grungy, kind of dark grungy colours. And this was mixing some secondary colours together and complementary colours. And I came up with greys. So I've got an orange grey, I've got a purple grey, and I've got some brown greys, green greys, blue greys. And I really loved this because I hated that page. And I was thinking, there's no way I'm ever going to paint that page. But through the Graphitint and using and doing this page inspired me. I didn't finish it, admittedly, because I don't finish things. But there is a video on this, I think. But these colours inspired me to mix my own colours. And I really love that page. And I was thinking about doing this one. And then I got onto this kind of, as I said, this grungy, complementary colours in these really vibrant. I didn't want the grayscale. I wanted vibrant colours, but I wanted them grungy, and I didn't think I could do it. So another page again, I didn't think I'd ever colour because I didn't like it, were the the snails. So I thought, right, let's pick a snail. So I put yellow with a bit of purple. I scratched purple and I scratched yellow, and then I manipulated them together. Now, I didn't mix them completely together because that would have given me one solid colour. I just put a little bit of the purple over the yellow to dull it, and a little bit of the yellow over the purple to grunge it up. And I really liked how it was going. So I coloured this one in, and there is a video on this, I think it might be 2. And I really like the fact that they are kind of bright, but they are grungy. So I scratched a layer of green and a layer of red and manipulated the colour. So I did the palest first, and then I just, when I got the red on the paintbrush, stroked once only over the green. That dulled it, and it picked up green, and then I stroked back over the red to then dull the red. If I did gone 2 more, I would have ended up with a dull colour between, and they would have given me a brown. So the same with the purple, and then I started doing light yellows and dark greens and grunging them up. And I really liked some of these colours. And of course, that means that I used 6 to 8 colours here, maybe 10 colours. So if you've only got a few colours, complementary colours will go together. And I really like that. I really like the fact that I could put those together and colour this page, that when I first looked at it, thought, well, that's not my thing. I'm a flower girl. No way I'm ever going to colour that. And I think that's inspired me to do the train as well. It inspired me to do the bug. So, Alfie's in trouble. So I didn't like this, but I do like some of these colours. So that it gave me the inspiration to then do Metal Mickey. Because again, the bugs, I didn't think I'd like to do them. The same with the metallics. These are the Derwent metallics, and I've got some 12 Derwent metallics and 12 Caran d'Ache metallics. And again, they are actually in here. I may have actually used them from here. No, I haven't. You see, they're the metallics. So they wouldn't do big spaces, but they would do tiny, tiny spaces. But the Derwent and Caran d'Ache metallics are in there as well. So this then gave me the inspiration to tackle the train. So again, I scratched the 2 colours. The reds, I use a different red. I use a pinky red and I use an unusual green, but it still works the same because they're complementary colours. So I activated that bright red, and then I stroked the green once, which picked up green, and you can see where I went back over the red again. So you get different tones and different reds and different mixes. So I probably would have got that deep purple colour. It's probably the mixture of the 2 together. And that's going to be how I do this. So I will have to watch this video again because I can't remember what colours I used. I will get those colours out, and then I will scratch 2 complementary colours at either side of a shape, and then I would mix the 2 together. Sorry, I wouldn't mix the 2 together. Go for the palest colour first, activate that, go over the darkest colour, which transfers the red, and then goes back over to dull that next colour. And I really like that, so I think that's going to be a different way of colouring. So Alfie's coming here now because he's in the doghouse. So that's using Neos in a different way. I thought this would be interesting. Again, no idea what I'm going to do with these, so I've left them. And that led me to think, well, actually, I'm missing out because I'm missing these. I'm buying another colour book and I'm completely forgetting what I've got to do in other books. How I did this one is I used a professional, and it's not sticky. Sorry, it was a student grade, beg your pardon, but it was in a big pot of System 33, I think it was, acrylics. But before I did that, I actually went round with masking fluid, because there's no way I wanted to draw over around everything. So I did masking fluid, let that dry, and then I went over in black, let that dry, and then I rubbed it off. The only mistake I made is I rubbed it off before it was dry, and I've just damaged that bit there. So I had a bit of a big blob. You do not have a big blob, because if you do, you damage your page a bit. But it was an experiment. But again, I've forgotten to go back and colour these in. I think these would be good in Hydrus. I was thinking Neos, but I might do them in Hydrus. And then they will really pop out then. This one I thought I would do a comparison between Derwent watercolour pencils, which are very underestimated and underused, and Derwent Inktense pencils. And when you look at them side by side, I tried to match the colours up as much as I could. I scratched colour in, so I think there's about 16 colours here. Scratched the colour in and then went light to dark, so I mixed them together. So this is the, I managed to get a watercolour effect. So this is Inktense pencils, and then scratching colours together and then blending them on the page is the Derwent watercolour pencils. And when you think the watercolour pencils, you can use them as a pencil. You've also got them as a watercolour pencil, but they're very vibrant. If you look, you wouldn't think there'd be such... I was very shocked that some of these colours here are almost as bright as these colours here. Just give me 2 seconds. I think I swallowed a fly. So if anybody's got any questions, pop them in caps, please, so I can read. Otherwise, I don't look down. So apologies if I've missed anything. So if you want to if you want to catch my eye, please pop your comments into capital letters. You're allowed to shout at me. So I was very surprised how blooming marvellous the Derwent watercolour pencils are. So if you were thinking that you needed the Inktense to be bright, you know, you don't. There is a slight difference, obviously, but there's not much, considering how very pale you can then get these. And these are a watercolour. If I wet this, it'll move. If I wet this, it won't, because this is Inktense pencils. And although once you've scratched the colour, they are watercolour, once they have dried, they've activated them and they're dried, they're difficult to move. I hope that makes sense. And so other things that I've wanted to do, and I want to finish this, but I can't remember what I used. So I'm going to have to watch the video, and I've just made, this is one of the first ones, so I've got 500 and some to find my Tutankhamun. Now, this again, I started this, I was in a real foul mood when I started this. Again, scratched the colour and then made it kind of grungy. But I thought, again, do I want to do it as an elephant? I'm actually colouring this in digitally, and I'm doing it in greys. And I'm doing it digitally in grungy colours as well. So it's quite interesting, is this one. So because my hands are poorly, I've gone back to digital again. So I look at a page and think, am I going to do it the same, or am I going to do a comparison? Now this one I could do a comparison with the Hydrus and the Peerless. In fact, that's what I might do. So I'm going to write myself a note because I forget. These are extremely vibrant, and so are these. So I think I'm going to do a comparison. And then again, you don't think much until you start looking at how good, and you appreciate how good things are. So I need a sticky note. Now, I did put a sticky note on one of the back pages, but if it's just ordinary paper, it's okay. So just bear with me 2 seconds. And I can't write, I cannot hold a pencil because it's too thin. So I'm thinking about getting some pencil holders so that I can do that. So we want Derwent. No, we don't want Derwent. We want Peerless watercolors, and on this side, now I did do this with another colour book, but it didn't work because I didn't do it immediately. But because this, I will do this with this one, and this is the Hydrus watercolors. Because, and the other thing is, I don't actually know what I want to do with it, so that is another reason. I kind of find I might want to do teals. I'm thinking I'm getting into bright colours, so I think I might want to do it. The bird colours. And I think that would be quite unusual for a swan, because that's the reason I hadn't touched this, is, well, the swan's white. End of story. Now we can get black swans, but then you need to do your shading for black swans. Actually, black swans might look quite good. But the easiest thing to do is to use that gorgeous, in the first set, they give you phthalo green and phthalo blue. And so by touching, oops, I've got so many palettes opened, it's quite funny. By touching the green, and you can see how I've done it, damp brush, touch the green, touch the blue, and then gone for it. So if I've got slightly more green than blue, I've got a greeny blue, and if I've got slightly more blue than green, I've got a bluey green. And literally that's all I do. Dampen the brush, take it off with a baby wipe, then touch two colours, tiny, tiny, tiny specks. You do not want a lot of this colour. It would be so strong then. And then you can have the watercolour effect. It will start very, very strong and go pale. Very strong here, and then I've used the next bit, gone dark, the next bit, gone dark, the next bit. Because there's no way that would get from there to here dark enough. It'd all be dark. So I had to do a dark bit. So if you can see, that's probably following on 3 tones. So we start very dark, medium, and pale. Very dark, medium, and pale. I must have done this when they were a bit drier, because here got very strong and then pale. Here started very pale, sorry, very strong and pale. Very strong and pale. Here, very, very strong, almost to nothing. Very strong, almost to nothing. So you can do that even though it's wet, but you do get a better watercolor effect from dark to light if these are a bit dry. So if you want them wet, use them the day you put them out. And if you want, think, oh, well, actually that page I'd like to do as a watercolor effect, then let them dry for a couple of days. And so those two have kind of been a mixture of gouache, professional watercolor. That's not professional watercolor, that's the Cotman, Winsor Newton Cotman, which is student grade. These are Cotman student grade. These are professional Winsor Newton. Again, I just bought 6 to start with. The Hydrus. This is the Cotman in pans, and there's 24 colours here. I wanted to work from wet, so these are Hydrus, but they have now dried. And I've mixed a lot of colours. There's a video about this. So even though I only have 15 bottles, I've managed to get quite a few greens, quite a few yellows and oranges, 1 or 2 greens, a couple of purples, but then I've mixed all these greens. I do have a phthalo green and a phthalo blue here, but all these are mixed with 2 drops of yellow, 1 drop of blue, 2 drops of blue, 1 drop of yellow, and so on and so forth. And there's tons of colour there. And I used the green and the pink. I can't remember what I did actually, and the brown. I can't actually, off the top of my head, remember what page I coloured, but I might come to it in a minute. And I have also got this one, which has got the Hydrus around the outside, and then my professional watercolour pans on the inside. And these are tubes which I've filled the little pans as well. So, and some of those paints I've had a long time. But these were my newest ones, my professional watercolours. These cost me £3, and they went a long way, I can tell you. And there's a lot of colour on these. This is why I'm not going to wash this away. you know, this is professional watercolor. There's a lot of color on here. And this was the inspiration, this brown here. And again, sometimes it's the paints. They've sent me these by mistake. Just have to get rid of all my palettes. Just give me a second. And I thought, well, what on earth am I going to do with this? And then the fox, again, big space, big tail. How on earth am I going to colour this and not buckle my pages? And I thought the fox, in fact I didn't think the fox, beg your pardon, I started the castle first, which I think is in here. Bear with me 2 seconds, we'll just do this. I'll show this bit and then I'll stop this video because it's gone on for long enough. Because the other one was cut in half. I thought the castle was in the new book. Could you please shut the door, please? Thank you. Ah, there's my... Right, I need a little tag for this because I want to show you what I did with this one. Right. Just see if I can find these castles in the air. I've lost my castle. I've lost my castle. I don't know how you can lose the castle. Give me 2 seconds. Oh, hi, Suzanne. Your little boy is in trouble. And I'd done this fox here in a different colour. So, oh no, I didn't do it. Oh, I did. Dash. So when they sent me these by mistake, this colour here inspired me for this page. And I thought, oh yes, that's going to be really nice. It's going to be brick red castle. And I sat out in the sun and did this, and it was quite pleasant. I think I did it with a water brush, and it was very quick. I didn't get too much of a watercolour effect, but it was very quick, and it was kind of the therapy kind of page, so you just want to colour it in. And then I got, that was in Imagimorphia, and then it came to my Mythomorphia, and I suddenly thought, oh, this is a big space, this, but that red, and it's actually, I think it's called brick red, inspired me to think, well, actually, yeah, the fox is going to be good. So from one colour, I've been inspired to colour a brick building and a red fox, which you wouldn't normally put together. So sometimes it's the paints that inspire you, and sometimes it's another colour book, another colour page. And lastly, I'll just show and I've got a shadow, apologies, because I've got that there. When I was talking about my gold and silver Neos that I replenished in the first video, I had a gold and a silver, then I scratched a silver and then gold on top. And when you saw this, it was completely, well, it wasn't completely bare, but I'd used an awful lot of those three colours. And I'd completely coloured in, again, a page that I would not have normally done. So we've got flesh colour here, and then everything else, and it's not very silvery, but everything else is the Neo gold and silver, and then the colour I made as well. Apologies, I've got a wire threading that's annoying me. And again, I wouldn't have liked to do that page because there's a lot of metal and bone. I think I've just got the bone to do. And I hadn't decided which colour. I've got the bird to do. So I kind of really liked, I enjoyed doing that, and that was with the Neo. The Neo Gold, Silver and Flesh. I think this is the Neo colour. No, I think these are Hydrus. This is Tea Rose. So the Tea Rose that I have here is the Hydrus. Really, really like that. So I've done, I think that's Hydrus. I think that's the same space, but I think this one is, oh, that could be Peerless as well. But I think this one is Hydrus. So again, inspired by the really vibrant red colours. Now, I did lose it a little bit when I did this one, because this is a shiny surface and this is a shiny surface, and sometimes you've got to think about that, because I like doing this middle one, and I couldn't believe how horrid this was behaving, and it took me quite a while to work it out, and it's because it's a shiny surface. So really, with a water-based medium, it's quite nice to work on matte pages, and then you can have a lot more control over things. Well, yes, sorry, Claire, I was going to say that. So that's how I've been working recently. But how I originally started with my book of, when I use my book of colours normally, I will mix the colours. And I think the last video I did, I like the Tea Rose from the Peerless. And I love the two greens in the Gansai Tambi watercolours. Now, the only difference, the difficulty is doing a video like this is not everybody has got my colour book. So normally I don't use this. So I like the two greens, and you can see the greens I've used the most here. I use number 58 and I use 54, but I don't use them from the pans because you can't get that colour grade. When you use them from the pans, you normally get one solid colour. So again, you need to get 10 shades, you need to use them from a paper palette. And I'm quite pleased that Gansai Tambi Watercolour copied my idea and made little puddles of colour for a travel set. But I would quite easily like to use those greens. For the Bible journaling, I use those greens, and I use, although I'm now actually quite like my Neos, but I haven't had them very long. I like the only two I don't mix together, the only one I don't mix together are the Graphitint. If I'm doing something in Graphitint, I tend to do it all in Graphitint. But I'm going to make some bigger squares for those as well. So these are the Derwent Inktense. I look at a colour here and I mix it with another colour, but it doesn't happen to be any particular one. I like geranium in the Derwent watercolours, my favourite colour for flowers, but I do like my Peerless greens, and I like my Tea Rose colours, some of my reds and pinks, geranium pink here, like that one as well. So it's nearly time to buy some more of these, I think. And I will have bigger squares in, because I'm tending to be, my hands are not working well, so I tend to use my book a lot more. So it means that I can still colour and use a big brush. Somebody asked me earlier, why am I not using the pencils? I just can't pick a pencil up for long. I really can't. So scribbling with a pencil at the moment isn't really an option. So that's a little bit of an insight into what inspires me to use certain things in certain books. So stay with me, guys, because I'm going to make some colour squares for that. So thank you for watching.